Welcome to the World Gaming Trade Show. I am your host from the In-Game Boss program, a network of gaming and other variety shows. But as Jeremy, I also go by the Retro Activist and also your In-Game Boss. And also with me, the Game Addict Podcast, Mr. Brendan. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, man. How are you doing?
Man, so far pretty good. As you know, for this show, it's always fun to go with the games that we decided on and see what we come back with. It's always fun having this episode, doing this episode with you, once a month. Just, I think I'm more excited of being away from each other for a little bit and then slowly sending pictures like, here's my pick. And then imagining what your reaction is. You know what I mean? Like this game? Really? It's like, all right. We'll see what happens, because I don't know, for listeners, I don't know what is your mindset of when you decide what game that you want to pick next. I don't know, or do you have a rotation? Are you like, this time I'll do action, this time RPG? Is it go by feeling? Do you just stare at your games like that one? What, for the listeners, what is your kind of ideal of how do you like to select your games for the next episodes and whatnot?
A little bit of all the above.
Okay.
Okay, so early on, I had a couple of games instantly. I'm like, all right, so I'm gonna do this one and then this one. But then also, I have literally sat there in my game room like this, staring at my shelf, looking. Nope, we ain't doing Sledstorm. Nope, not today. Nope. How about that Soviet Strike? I don't know, man. Soviet Strike. Man, who remembers Soviet Strike? I don't remember Soviet Strike. I haven't. But then, when I do try to that one, I'm like, I just did an RPG last time, though. I don't want to dive right into another one right away. Mm-hmm. So then sometimes I will talk myself out of certain ones and save them for later. This time around, though, you gave me your pick first. And then I'm like, yeah, I need to get back with him pretty quick on something. I'm like, he picked that. So I'm going to go on the opposite side and do something completely off the rails. I'm like, got it. Interesting. I wonder what he's going to say about this. So that's kind of what I did on that one. I was like, I was wondering what you were going to say because there was one pick that we did. I can't remember. There was one episode in the past that we lost, and I can't remember which one we lost.
It was Onimusha.
Okay.
And it was, I forgot your pick was, but that was an interesting one. But yeah, that one was games that I almost forgot about Onimusha on that one. And so, and I gosh, what was your pick? I forgot. I apologize.
I can't remember if that was the Fear Effect one or not.
I have to probably look at our history because that's where I keep all our saves. So I go back and see all the picks that you did based on your pattern, because I'm the same way. When you send me a picture, I'm like, okay, what should I go with to kind of go with that flow? Or I'll just pick something just for the hell of it sometimes. Just let's just go with it. Because sometimes we'll get matches in the same console. Because most of the time on the show, we always have picks that are at least from different consoles. You might pick something from PS2. I might pick something on PlayStation and whatnot. But it was December when we hit one together we didn't know, and that was Kung Fu and Duck Hunt, right? And it was okay, two classics on this one. Didn't see that coming. And then, for the listeners, we do themes. Like our last episode in January, we did our Extreme episode, with 1080, Wave Rays, and Excite Bike, and on top of that, we did Star Wars and whatnot.
We also did an unintended themed episode where we did Shadowrun.
Yes.
And then we did Snatcher. Both cyberpunk type deals. And it was funny because we both kind of had it we didn't plan that. We weren't hyped for cyberpunk and decided to do these games. It was that's just the way it happened.
Mm-hmm. By the way, it was Fear Effect. So yeah, so you were right. Yeah. But for the listeners, what is this show about? Well, all the games we described to you are games that you haven't heard in a long time. Games way back. Either they had one round, maybe they had a couple of rounds, But our goal to the show is to bring them back to life, bring them on the showcase and present them. and talk about developers that we would like to see take them and do something beautiful with them, something great. And we imagine how we would like the game to turn out and whatnot. And, you know, we mostly pick any developer we want, but at the same time, we'll sometimes pick developers that we feel like it might be possible if done right, you know. But for you, the listeners, your goal is to listen to the show and let us know, you know, what picks that you think. Do you agree with our picks? Do you disagree with our picks? We would love to hear all your thoughts. And I like the fact that we do pick games that, like, I remember seeing but never playing. So it gives me a chance to go do some research on it and whatnot. Like your pick, like we'll talk about later, but I never played that game. But the research I did was fascinating about that game. Because, you know, I know a lot of gamers out there have been to, well, at least for our generation, have been to the old school places where games were there for us to rent, you know, your Blockbusters and whatnot. And, you know, you'll pass a bunch of games and you're deciding what game you're going to rent for the day or rent for the weekend. And most of the time, it's always the box cover. It's really going to come to your decision, do I want to get this game or not? And so most of these games that I see them, but I'm not ever interested in them, but I always remember the artwork. And that's what one of Brendan's picks. Like, I remember seeing that artwork all the time, but I just never took a chance on it. Maybe I was not in the mood for that genre at the time. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood for that style of game, you know, and vice versa for Brendan. And that's why this show is so special to me, because the fact that, like, here's the games that I skipped over my generation or even played like once in one rental day or something like that, and never got a really chance to see where this would have gone or what happened. Some studios get defunct. There's nothing we can do about it, you know? So hopefully, you know, the publisher, the studio can take that and give it to someone else to collaborate and whatnot. So, Brendan, anything you want to add to that?
No, man. Just that, you know, you talked about the video rental stores, and like Family Video is closing down now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that does make me a little bit sad. You know, like our local one closed down back in the fall, and now they're going on nationwide close down. And that was just I know they have games at Redbox now, but they have that was just, that's how I played a lot of games growing up, man. That is how I got to try a bunch of games growing up, and because I didn't have enough money to go out and buy games or go and collecting. It was like, hey, you know, Dad's like, do you want a game this weekend? I went, yeah. And here's my list in order of what ones I would like to try out, because I would keep track of, you know, if it was before I had internet, it was in gaming magazines. I did track about what's coming out or what is out. And then, you know, after I got the internet, it was easily like, what's out now, you know, what's new. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, usually my dad would stop on the way home from work because there's a Family Video, and he would go in there and he would find it and he'd get it to me. And that'd be my weekend, man.
That's awesome. That's
you know,
awesome.
it's like a bygone era now. You know, now it's like we're lucky if we get a demo on the PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo store. You know, or
if you're lucky, you know, some magazines will give you demo on discs. Remember
back
those?
In the day, that used to be a thing too. Yeah, back in the day, man. That's sometimes that's what sold me on buying a magazine, like
right?
At the grocery store. You know, like, oh crap, this got a demo of Crash Bandicoot 3
right.
On that.
I miss those days, man, because especially I was a big Dreamcast person. I'm still a diehard Dreamcast fan, you know. But, man, I love those magazines because they always came with, like, a bunch of demos for those. Like, oh, this is awesome, you know. And so shout out to Dreamcast. But let's go ahead and get this show on the road. So my first pick is a game I sent to you. We actually talked about it on the show before. We even talked about one of the developers doing one of the choices a while back. And I actually, when I send you the picture of this, I actually was playing it at the time, and I finished it up about a couple weeks ago. Finished the game up. I wanted to kind of relive those moments again and just see like what ideas I can come in this and everything like that. I forget how psychological this game is. It messes with your mind, not Kojima style, but you know, it messes with your mind. It really makes you rethink the way you're playing the game and rethink really know yourself when you play this game, you know. But this is a reboot to a series that was on the PS1, and it's kind of dead. And then 2K got the rights for it and tried out something. But this is Spec Ops: The Line, and I think a lot of people, if I said that name, the first thing you come to your head will probably say underrated, cult classic. I have never played a game like that where I feel like I am a terrible person. So those are probably the top 3 things you're probably thinking, because Spec Ops was a game. The cover itself was not. It's okay. It didn't. It's like, oh, cool guy on the cover and everything like that. But it wasn't until you got your hands on it that it's different than what it seems. Because let's be honest here, the gameplay is not really off the charts. I mean, it reminds you of Gears. But it was a story about a rescue mission, or not so much a rescue mission. It felt like more of an investigation that just goes off the rails. It almost, weirdly enough, Brandon, it has a bit of a noir feel to it, to the point where it's like very, very narrative, but also trying to figure out what's going on, but also trying to figure out who you are at the same time. And I remember going through this game, and the first 20 minutes, it's traditional. It can be boring. Nothing's going on. It's not until about 20, 30 minutes in, it just goes. It's an adrenaline, and it doesn't stop. It keeps going and going and going. So much it can be overwhelming, but it's still a good pace. While you're accompanied by 2 guys that are there for your support, but then they start questioning stuff. And it just goes crazy and crazier and crazier. What I love about this game, it also has a BioShock feel, to the point where you're going from, in this big city of Dubai, going building to building, going from skyscrapers, jumping off roofs, all this stuff. It just keeps going and going with these big moments. And one of my favorite moments is like when you're using environment to your advantage, like even the first beginning where they recommend you to blow out a window of a bus full of sand so it can drown the enemies. So that was a little crazy and whatnot. Even to the point where some of your allies will relate to you, and they're pretty smart AIs. Like, you tell them to target something, they're going to target it and probably kill it. So that's really cool, because if they didn't get that down, it'd probably be a terrible thing. But you never expect what's going to happen next. I think that's what's really cool about it. But I did my talk. Brandon, you played the game. You tell listeners your thought of it.
Oh, okay. So when I played the game, the only reason why I even got to play this game was because of PlayStation Plus.
Okay.
Back in the day, man, PlayStation Plus was fire. It was awesome. It was like a suitable replacement in a way for those rentals or whatever. I took so many chances on games by being a subscriber, and I didn't have the subscription for the longest time. And when I did it, it was back before it was required to play online. This is back on the days of the PlayStation 3. You just got some free games every month. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I signed up, they had like that instant collection. It was like a bunch of stuff for PS3 and Vita and all that kind of jazz. And it allowed you to just dive in and play a bunch of different games. And I remember one month this game was on there. I'm like, I've seen this game. Just like you said, seen the cover. Never really, thought anything of it. Let's fire this up. And the first thing I noticed, really cool visual environment, like for that desert and wind, sand, and like it was really well done for the time. And then there's Nolan North being Nolan North, it's the same Nolan North voice. He's not Drake, he's not Desmond Miles, but it's Nolan North. I'm like, okay, cool, all right, I recognize that guy. But no, dude, like everything that you said, this game, it does go above and beyond, because I felt cool that it was in that Gears style, because Gears really did change the way that we view third-person over-the-shoulder shooters. Of course, we other games that like have kind of brought that into it. Like even Mass Effect, one of my favorite games, brought some of that feel into Mass Effect 2 and 3, and so to get to play that style on a PS3, which didn't have too many of those, was really cool. But then you said that's just the tip of the iceberg with this game, And I feel like that's what sets this game apart from like a Gears, where Gears is a lot more gore and visceral and just like, blah. And this game it's different, as you said, more psychological, and that sits home with me more than all of the bombastic explosions and cutting your way through it like a big worm or something in Gears of War. Sure, that's kind of looks cool, and you're like, yeah, bravado, let's go do this and that. Here, like you said, it's not Kojima style. It's not that level of like messing with your mind, but it does make you question, your own morality. And if you can hear my kid over there, I think he's literally, yeah, his head. I don't know if you can hear this, guys out there. I got kids, man. I got kids. He's looking underneath the door, and he's just looking in here and screaming at me. So, but no, this was one of those awesome PS Plus games that I got that was just an awesome secret that I didn't know about. And I had a couple of those during that, and then this was one of the big highlights from that era.
Yeah, I think it's what's so interesting about this game, that this game is becoming studies for gamers and whatnot. People are going in to study the questions of like, what is this game's theme? What is it trying to tell you? To the point, there's theories of, and spoiler, but just the fact that like they question about you, like at the beginning, were you already dead? When did you die? When was this a dream and not a dream? Was this all real? Was the person you're going for the real goal of this game? There was a lot of questions in this game, and even to the point where they have you make tough decisions so you can understand the gruesome world of the buy. I remember one mission, and this is the big icon, one of the biggest iconic ones, because this is when everything starts going down the rails. Was the two men hanging on this under-row bridge with snipers aiming at these two. And you have to decide if you want to. You don't have to, but you have to decide who is worse. The guy that stole this bread or this guy that went after him and killed his family. And snipers are aiming at these people where if you won't decide, we're shooting both of them. So you have to come to the decision of what you think is right or wrong, even though there's no right answer.
Yeah.
There's really no right answer in any of this. And then also the biggest part, and I'm not going to spoil it, but there was a big part in this game where you thought you did something right and you didn't. And you have to figure out what you're going to do. And they will torture you in this game over and over and over again. And I think it tried to do a good job of telling you about violence in video games. Of you're playing Call of Duty, you're playing Battlefield, you're doing all this stuff, killing all these people, but are you taking it seriously? Like, do you understand that you're killing innocent people and you might not even know it? So we're going to question you on that. And it did a good job doing it.
I really love when games do that, because it really, after you're done with the whole situation, done with the game, it makes you reflect. What it makes you reflect, and it sometimes it can even change the way that you view future games. Of am I being lied to? Am I being misled here? Is this actually legit? Is this going to come in? Because sometimes there's little twinges of things like that. But one thing that I do like in games, and this is a completely different game, it's when you have you feel like you're doing the right thing, but the game forces you to do it, and there's no way to move forward. They did that just recently last year with The Last of Us Part 2. Through her perspective, yeah, we're doing the right thing, but the game will not move forward in this scene until you hit that square button and make her hit this girl, smack her with a pipe or whatever. If you play the game, you know what I'm talking about. People out there, you cannot move forward, even if you yourself in the moment go, man, I don't know. Is this the right thing? The game is that you're going to do this. She's going to do this, and you're going to hit that button. Another good example of that same kind of thing, but different, was Snake Eater, Metal Gear Solid 3. We name dropped Kojima earlier, and that's what made me think of it while you were talking about that. When you near the end of the game, so slight spoilers here. It's an old game, so hopefully you guys aren't hold me to that too much. But it gets to the point where Snake, in order to beat the game, in order to save the day, you've got to kill like the main boss, so to speak. Wink, wink. And the game will not move forward. There's sirens over there. I got sirens over there. I got baby over there. That could even have been a wolf outside. I don't know.
I feel like every time you speak Kojima, then all this stuff happens.
Yeah, right. I know. Like it almost sounded like the dang Silent Hill siren outside for a second.
Right.
I got scared. But no, it's like a cut scene, and then the little box goes away, and you're just sitting there, and it will not move forward until you pull that trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And then you pull the trigger, and it comes back down with a cut scene because it wanted you to know and feel that impact that you pulled that trigger.
Yeah,
you ended this game. And then what they decide to do is at the end, everything you knew, here's the truth. And you go, because they made you shoot. And now, and to me, that invests you so much more into these characters and into that story. And just like you said, making you choose what is right and what's wrong. There is no right answer there. But literally, it's that impossible answer. It's like, what do you do if with a gun to your head and someone says, I'm gonna kill your wife or your kid? You choose. You can't choose in that moment. I could not do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tell them to shoot me, like at that moment. But that's not a choice. And like in a game, you can't just say, kill me. I guess I'll turn the game off. I died. No. In that moment, no. It's like you're put in that situation and you're playing them, and that is a level of storytelling that we don't get to see in every style of game. And for some people, that's they can't handle that. So kind of stuff, and I completely understand. Mm-hmm. But that's also so trippy for me, and why I really enjoy that kind of stuff. And
it can definitely connect to you. If I can understand, like if people like in military cannot play this game because it can that can really mess with your mind. One thing about this game does have multiple endings based on the decision that you make, of course. Each ending is very interesting. It can go from one ending can be the game's over to an epilogue. So it depends what you want to do at the end. You decide what's right or wrong at that point. And if people play that game, I'd love to hear your thoughts of like, what was the hard decision in this game for you and whatnot. Now, what about this game I brought up for? Well, the problem is that this was a game that was meant to be a reboot for the series, but sadly enough, it was a commercial failure because it came out not at a good time. There was a lot of big AAAs at the time, so it definitely got swept under the rug. And the fact too, in my mind, I don't think it was marketed enough, because the fact that Brendan found it as being a PS Plus member proves right there that they had to put it on that platform to get people to notice. So they didn't really 2K didn't really market it enough for me personally. But if I would want to do, I would like this game to come back, but I wanted to stick with the idea that they have. Play with the mind. Does it have to be exactly like Spec Op the Line? No. But it needs to be to a story where it does question you and give you tough choices. In the Spec Op the Line, I did pause the game a couple times and had to sit there and think for a minute, like, what should I do? I want that choice. I want to have that mindset again. I want to do that. And it doesn't have to. Spec Ops is military, and I would like it to be in a different environment. It could be in the jungle. How's it feel to fight in the jungle? What does that mindset feel like in the jungle? That would be crazy to see. How would it be, being behind the scenes where you have to leave your family and stuff and never come back maybe? I don't know. Something where you have to get in that mindset of there's a chance that I can ruin my life, or a chance to I'll never be the same again, and Spec Ops has something with that, and 2K should do that. Now, when it comes to the gameplay, I still think it should be in third person, but it just has to be polished up a little bit more and have a little bit more better ideas. For instance, I like Spec Ops with the environment, what they try to do, especially the parts where, like, you have enemies shooting from the top. You can shoot the glass and they fall to their deaths. I love that environment stuff. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. That's awesome to have two different choices. The gun library of that game is not the best to me. You really try to find the best weapon. And honestly, once you find the best one, you really want to hold on to it. You don't really want to keep switching guns over and over again. And it's funny because, like, when you first play the game, you're rarely on your main gun because you run out of bullets so quick in that game. You run out of bullets really quick. That's why they force you to pick up all these guns all the time. But I do like it on the go. I do want to be pushed. I don't want downtime. I want to keep being pushed. Like, keep pushing me forward. Like, what's the next thing going to happen next? Keep me on my feet. Because what the thing Spec Ops did was they kept you on the go because they don't want you to sit and think too long. They want you to hit those moments and then reflect those later. And we're talking, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It just keeps the tension.
Yes.
And as you said, it's paced well, but like it literally keeps you like gripped to that tension of like rising. Big moment, bring it down just a little bit into the next section. There are games that really do that balance very well, and this is definitely one of them.
Yeah, because if you think about it, really, we're trying to be in our mindset of what's happening in that moment. You're not going to have downtime. Yeah. You got helicopters chasing after you. You gotta help certain people in trouble and everything like that. Like, I want that pace. I want that. So definitely keep that going. So my stuff is really simple for all this stuff. I think Spec Ops did a good job of what they have. They just kind of have to, polish up and tighten some of the gameplay a little bit more, and take a little bit more advantage of the environment on certain things that could work in the environment they were using. The desert was an awesome idea for this because there's a lot to play in this sandbox. No pun intended. But, what about in the jungle? Like I said, like, how would you play that in the environment? Think Predator. Like, minus Predator, but think the intense moment of, like, you think the desert's tough? Jungle is tough because you can't... Anybody can come from anywhere. It's so hidden, but it's also so scary and alarming. I would get my adrenaline rush knowing that someone can shoot me at any moment and I can't see except like, a couple of trees and stuff. You know what I mean, Brendan? That's some scary stuff, man.
That's funny because that's kind of where I kind of went to in my mindset with who I chose for my pick.
Okay.
If we're ready to go there, because I kind of agree with you. It should still be in third person, but I do like the idea of being pushed forward, not having too much of a wide open space to go and explore, because I feel like this kind of game hitting on these notes shouldn't be doing to that. Even though I name dropped Last of Us Part 2, those games do a good job of getting you gripped on psychologically what's going on in that world. But in a different way, and there is a little bit of exploration there. So you can do a little bit, but not. No. We got to keep going forward. So who I picked, they're kind of in the news right now because they just got announced for doing something big. But that's not the reason why I picked them. I picked them because they are versed at doing some third person shooters, but they also did another game that I was kind of thinking of about setting and then tension. Even though this game is in first person, and the group that I picked is Massive Entertainment. Okay. From Ubisoft. They just got announced that they're doing a Star Wars game, Untitled Star Wars game. Cool, awesome. Because they just more recently, the last few games they did were the Division, like 1 and 2, and that's where I thought, okay, it's a cool third person. But there's a game that's really awesome, Far Cry 3. Okay. And it's not as psychological, but I remember playing that game in first person and getting immersed in this jungle, and you've got to go around and you got to survive. And there's animals and people with guns, but there was the tension there, and so I feel like if they could like meld in some of their different gameplay aspects, with that tension, but keep the psychological level that was already started here with that groundwork. I mean, Far Cry 3 was a great game, fantastic game, and they also did Assassin's Creed Revelations. And that was one of my personal favorite Assassin's Creeds back then because it brought a lot of roundabout to the story for that series. It brought Ezio and it brought Altair together. And it's like, wow, okay, this is cool. Like it rounded the belt that I wasn't ready for. So like they did that. They did Far Cry, so they can do story-based games. They can do it. And as far as gameplay, I remember the first Division was really rough around the edges for me, and it found a footing. But then Division 2 played a lot better. But unfortunately, I just kind of feel like Division 2 doesn't get talked about a lot right now. And I'm not sure if it's still really super active. I mean, I don't think it's a dead community by any means. But I don't know. I just kind of feel like they have a good take on action. And you know what? If they decided to change it into first person can lend itself tremendously to the psychological stuff because it immerses you more. Me personally, I'm more of a third person guy, so I would like to keep that and try to carry it forward. And as you said, another good thing it was to be more creative with the environmental damage. We don't got to go full crackdown here, but we can. Right. We could get really creative because that kind of stuff is really fun, like you said.
Yeah, when you said Far Cry 3, that's a great example because that is a mindset of a person that that becomes a monster and can't go back to the real world, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting, right? And I guess you can say that for Spec Ops: The Line 2, where here's a guy that can't leave either, He became a different person. So, Massive Games. That'd be interesting to see what they've done. The question I have for Massive Games is, would they do a good job of just keeping it on the path?
Right. You know? I mean, no, and I definitely get that because both of us agree that it should be a little bit more linear, and we have seen with a lot of their games they're not really linear. They just look right at the vision. Everything is big and open. Far Cry, big and open. So different kind of setting here. So you definitely have to keep them on the rails, because you definitely don't want something that is this psychological where you have to go man, I got to go take over 14 towers to unlock this part of the map. Got to go do here. I got to do this, and then I can go back into my psychological goodness. No, no. As we said before, we want to keep tension, and that's very important.
I think if they can pull this off, and this is going with my pick, is I think what would be really cool, and Spec Ops did it, but I don't think they thought of the idea yet to do it. But if Spec Ops does play with the mind a little bit. You start seeing visions, all this stuff. I would love for this game to have you do something that you think you did, right? And I know in this game it kind of does that, but let's say, for instance, I need you to go into this house and take care of everybody in here and get out. And then you realize that when you walked out of the house, you just shot up a house. There was no one there, but you thought there was, right? So you just see all these holes in the house and everything like that. But make it feel like that you actually did something. I don't know. I just thought that'd be kind of a cool. My pick is it's actually a double whammy, only because they did work on this game, but then the original studio ended up doing the third entry of it. But I think this game did a really good job of the mindset of a person that just had it so hard that not so much create his own mind. It's just more he is just physically and mentally exhausted. And I think that can definitely play with your mind, especially if the next entry should be a jungle one. You're going to be tired mentally and psychologically. And I would go with Rockstar for the Max Payne series. Because I was going to say Remedy, because Remedy was part of the 1 and 2. Then Rockstar in-house did the third one. But if you have played Max Payne, and I played a little bit, not the third one, but I played a little bit here and there, not fully. Now they're on PS4. I need to buy them so I can actually replay them and beat them for my sake. But that's a game where you have a guy that just never had a good life. Everything was just bad for him. Every other corner was a bad event, bad luck, everything. And to the point where he's almost losing his mind because he'll never find peace. And he has to deal with the things that keep occurring to him. And I think that can also influence the slow motions and all the all the great moments that game had to provide. And you forget that game is a Rockstar game after all the other accomplishments they have done with the Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, Bully, all of you forget that Max Payne was one of their early babies. Yeah. So I think Rockstar could do this, and they're in-house with 2K, so they can take that Spec Ops and turn it into something else. So that's who I picked.
No, that's a great pick because you said you never played the third game of Max Payne.
No, I never got a chance to play the third one. I actually, before this, I watched videos of it and some reviews, so I kind of just get a little bit of a snippet of what that is, and I want to play it.
Yeah, no, I definitely recommend it. It is a bit of a different thing from the first two.
Okay.
So like, definitely think about it. This is a bad analogy, but you have the Die Hard trilogy, right? Original Die Hard, John McClane having a bad day, and out of the blue, 20 years later, here's older John McClane, and he's doing some other shit, but he still has a bad day.
Yeah,
it's not directly tied to that original trilogy. It's not maybe as good, but it's the same character, having a bad day. But Max Payne 3, 1 and 2 go together very well. It fits together in this nice little story. Max Payne 3 takes place way later in a different country. I think it's in like Brazil or something. And he's off doing his thing. But the one thing that really gripped me about that game was the visual style they went with it. At first, it was odd, and I didn't get it. But the more that it was like setting the stage psychologically for, he's addicted to painkillers, and it's like all these like double vision kind of stuff, and like these things on the screen. You're like, man, I don't know if I like this. At first, it's off-putting, but the more that you play it, the more like, man, no, they're trying to get you in his head. This guy, as you said, he's never had a good day. Like him sitting there having a drink, buzzed and doing painkillers, and not having to shoot anybody is a good day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I remember that third game, like, because the first and two are also kind of like that, you're on a path and you do your thing to the next story bit. And, Max Payne 3 is kind of like that same deal where it's not big, wide, and open. You're on your pathway to the next thing. And it just it keeps building and building and adding. So that is a great pick because did you know which division part of Rockstar made the third one?
Based on the research I have, it was in-house, like just Rockstar themselves.
Because they got different teams.
Let me see real quick. Let me see here.
It's hard to say anymore because it used to be Rockstar North did all the GTAs, and then San Diego did Red Dead, and now maybe starting with Max Payne, but like GTA 5 and Red Dead 2, seems like all the teams are coming together to work on the big game, And for Max Payne 3, a lot of the stuff that they worked on and developed for the shooting mechanics, they brought that over to GTA 5, and so that's why the GTA 5 shooting mechanics feels a lot tighter than what it was in GTA 4. Is because they made a shooter. They made Max Payne 3, and so it felt a little bit tighter. And that's just one thing that I really like about Rockstar is that when they make a new game and they make a new style of game, whether it be shooter or like even like a racer like Midnight Club or something like that, they try to take aspects of that, even if it's not all the time in the same engine. But it's like, hey, we worked on it for this. How can we improve this element over here to make this tighter? Because I felt like doing that helped make GTA 5 feel more fluid and make it feel like, this ain't the best shooter in the world, but it feels good enough. This ain't the best racer in the world, but it feels good enough. I felt like it rounded the corners very well. And if you take an in-house team at Rockstar and give them a nugget like this, just think about the level of storytelling that Rockstar has done. I mean, start like Max Payne 3, but then like GTA 5 and Red Dead 2 really raised the bar for the level of storytelling that they're capable of doing with their sound stages, with their actors that they're hiring, with the script writers, because these are games that are massive games. And though the last two entries, they can be those big, massive open worlds, but they don't lack and they don't are absent of any of that really great storytelling that has been present in the more modern era of games, like we've had with like some of the Naughty Dog stuff and like what they did with God of War over at PlayStation in Santa Monica, that really dived into these great stories and performances from these actors. And I feel like Rockstar would be a great pick.
Yeah, based on the research, it just says Rockstar Studios. They didn't specify, and you're right. Like they have so many branches, but none of them spoke out to Max Payne. Might be a little bit of everybody, I guess.
Exactly. That could have been the start of that.
Yeah. So, but one thing is clear, and agree or disagree, every Spec Ops they do has to be a standalone, their own thing. I don't want the same character carry over. I want a different story for each Spec Op adventure.
No, that is a great baseline to go for. You know, this doesn't have to be, as I said earlier, John McClane. He keeps having bad days. You know, John McClane says in Die Hard 2, how can the same shit happen to the same guy twice?
Yeah.
And then it happened like 3 more times. So
Yeah.
it's no, absolutely not. No.
Okay. All right. Well, that is our pick for that one. That was a big conversation because, you know, there's so many layers of Spec Ops that I'm taking out because this can be another hour conversation of it. But I want you as the gamers to go play it, you know? So if you ever see it on sale, go pick it up.
On PS3. I'm sorry, but it's available on PS3 and 360 if you have those consoles. It was available on PlayStation Now as a PS3 streamable title. I'm not sure if it still is, but it is out there. And this is a game that if we don't get a new remake like what we were saying, it at least deserves an HD re-rank or a HD like remaster to bring it up because this is a story that needs to be shared with another generation.
Yeah.
Of gamers.
Yeah. And if you are a Steam player, it is also on Steam, and I caught it on a sale. So you can find it for a sale. You can get it for like easy $5. I think it's worth not a full 60. If I had to give it a full price or something, I'd say it's a good $30 game. You know, for what it is at the time, but it's cheap as hell. You won't waste your money. It's good. Okay. So, Brandon, you are picking a game that is actually the first one that I didn't think we were going to drop in this show yet. Like from a famous series, but not famous series. And so I'm excited for this one. This one threw me a little bit of loop. I didn't see this coming. I didn't think it's ever coming. But let's go ahead and get right to it.
So my pick is an RPG, and it's on the Super Nintendo, and it's called Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. So if any of you old timers like us, you know, we might remember it as he said, he saw the cover art. This is a game, you know. Okay, so it says Final Fantasy. Is it a Final Fantasy entry? No. No, not at all. And the funny thing is that if you look at the Final Fantasies that were around that time, they were a lot more expansive, big stories, complicated, and they felt like for whatever reason that us gamers over here in the West, we couldn't do complicated games. We can't do complicated RPGs. We're too simple. So what they made was kind of like an entry level RPG, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. In Japan, it is literally called Final Fantasy USA. Mystic Quest. I cannot that is almost that hurts, guys. That hurts. but no, what this game is, guys. As I said, it's an RPG, but it's very simplified, and it doesn't play like your typical Final Fantasy. You have your character, and you have like a rotatable second character. You have different people coming in and out. So there's only 2 people in your party at a time. So it's not like you have to keep 3 or 4 or 5 people alive. Just you and one other guy, but also like the health is represented by like a bar of hit points. It's a lot easier to keep track of, and as I said, it's a very rudimentary entry. I think it's only like 10 hours, like 12 hours long, so it's relatively short. Whereas at the time, Final Fantasy 4 and 6 are like these 40, 50-hour games. This wasn't that. This was dipping your toe in the water to see if you like that kind of stuff. We would kind of see that stuff going forward with some other entries later that we might talk about. I don't know. Okay. But anyway, no, man. The reason why I thought of this is because, as you said, it's slapped with that Final Fantasy name, but it's almost slapped with that as a, hey, you remember Final Fantasy? You need to check this game out, And I guarantee you, over in Japan, they were looking at the sales to see if a lot of people bought it, to see if they could start bringing those games over here. Because if you follow the Final Fantasy series at all over here, we didn't get every game as they came out. We got the first one on the NES. Cool. Did we get 2? Nope. We get 3? Nope. We got 4. 4 was the second Final Fantasy we got, but they thought we would be really confused if all of a sudden we roll up in the Blockbuster or Walmart or Toys R Us or KB Toys, wherever, and we see Final Fantasy 4, and we're like, where are the other 2?
That is true. No, that is true. That is true.
And so they named it Final Fantasy 2. All right. Did we get 5? Nope. Did we get 6? Yes. But that became Final Fantasy 3. And then we got Final Fantasy VII, and they called it Final Fantasy VII. So a little bit like, if anything, I think they helped confuse us.
Yeah.
I think if they just would have been like, you know what, they'll get it, you know. But I don't know why we didn't get every single entry, and I think part of it was because they felt like the games were too hard for us. And see, that's the same story that we had when with Super Mario 2, the original Super Mario 2. They're like, this game is like the first one but harder, and they're like, these North American kids, they need something easy. Let's give them that Doki Doki Panic game. Oh, all right. So we got Doki Doki Panic with Super Mario skins, and that's what that was our Super Mario 2, and it's kooky as hell, but it is what it is. This game here, it introduced you to the level of RPGs. It was an entry, like just an entry door, and a little bit different. Like you could jump. You know, there was a jump button. Like you couldn't do that. Like you can't even jump in Zelda. So it's made traversal a little bit weird. But I mean, overall, like it was pretty rudimentary. And the reason I want to talk about it, because we talk about entries and stuff that like hasn't been gone for a while. They've never done another entry in this series or another thing like this. Partially because the next it's not an entry, but the style of intro RPG that would be a team up with Nintendo. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, you're asking me. Sorry, I thought you were doing with the whole, listeners. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, I don't. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Super Mario RPG.
Should have got that. Yes.
So Square teamed up with Nintendo and made a nice little intro to RPG, because that's the one I played that. But I remember this game, and this game was my first Final Fantasy that I ever touched. I didn't own it, but my buddy had it. He played it all the time.
Okay.
Which was weird, because I'm like, all right, that's Final Fantasy. And then the first time playing a Final Fantasy, I'm like, this doesn't look like the one that I played. This is completely different. I don't know what to do. There's so many numbers. And maybe they were right. Maybe it was too advanced for me. But literally, no, I'm just thinking that it's been so long that they did this one little nugget, this one little thing here. And I feel like that, what would the next generation of younger gamers need to kind of get to? I mean, now we have different levels of intro from different people. We got you got Pokemon, a little bit of that. Then you had like Mario RPG and stuff like that. So I played a couple of newer ones, and so what I want to do with it is bring it forward to the next generation. As I said, keep this a little bit rudimentary. Keep it nice and short. Don't give them a 100-hour game. We don't need that. This is just an example of to get younger players. Do I like this style of game? Of course, the original one was turn-based, and that's the thing now with newer games. A lot of games aren't turn-based anymore for RPGs. I just started, fired up Dragon Quest 11. It was on Game Pass, right? Mm-hmm. And it's old school. It's turn-based. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I came off playing our FF7 remake, and that's all kind of like quasi-action, like almost Kingdom Hearts style. And that's fun. I like that game, but I also like a chance to just sit down and relax and just, with one hand, kind of hit A, like I'm going to hit attack. You hit that guy. All right, I'm going to do that. So, like, I understand that that's not for everybody, but I do feel like that is one thing that, Square is like, we have an action RPG with Final Fantasy. We have our traditional turn-based with Dragon Quest. There's not really a middle ground with them for that entry level. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you bring back the Mystic, you can even just call it Mystic Quest. You ain't got to call it Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. You could just, that could be the name of the damn.
Which I think that was the theory for me, is Final Fantasy was the comfort food.
Yeah.
That is of Mystic Quest. Go on.
No, but so like, I would keep it nice and simple. And so, like, the people that I chose for this, I almost went with somebody else, but because I found these guys first, and then I looked at somebody else because I remembered another game that I played that was in a similar style-ish, but then I came back to this, and it's Intelligent Systems, and they work with Nintendo.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
I mean, they've been around since the dawn of dirt for Nintendo,
Mm-hmm.
like 1986. I was just born. They made Duck Hunt. We just talked about Duck Hunt. Like, what's Duck Hunt have to do with this? Nothing. But I'm just telling you, they made Duck Hunt. They made Metroid.
We want you to know they shoot ducks before they, evolved.
Yeah, man. But there's another series that they make, Fire Emblem. They have their hands in some Fire Emblem. Okay, so they have RPG. Super Metroid. That's off the rails. What's that? But there's something else here. Advance Wars. Did you ever play that?
Oh yeah, I like Advance Wars on the GBA. Yeah, that's a series that does not get a lot of love.
No, I agree. In fact, I almost picked that for this series, but I did not.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But then Paper Mario.
Mm-hmm.
Paper Mario was a successor series to the original Mario RPG, where they made it completely in-house instead of going with Square again.
Yeah, and along with the other spinoff too, per se, that Mario Luigi.
See, and I even looked at them as a developer for this, but they just went bankrupt like 2 years ago.
Yeah, sucks.
So I decided on these guys because they're making Fire Emblem and they're making Paper Mario. So like they've got skill sets on both sides of the aisle where they can have the more complex style and the more simple, and maybe you can kind of meld them together. And so like the other developer, I don't even know what team it was. Actually, yes I do. Obsidian.
Okay.
They did South Park: Stick of Truth.
They did. Mm-hmm.
And so like for that game was so much better than I ever thought it was going to be. I'm a South Park fan. Haha, all the dirty jokes.
I like South Park too.
So
I like South Park too.
I love all that stuff. But literally, that game was way better than I had any right to be.
Right. Based on their record of South Park games, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, the next game would be a more tactical, like entry-level tactical. Okay. Grid-based. Okay, cool. But that first one was very Paper Mario-esque. It got you interested a little bit in playing. It was turn-based, but it also made you kind of hit a few buttons, and then very simple. You had two people. That reminded me a lot of that. So, like, if I were going to do it, like Intelligent, or even Obsidian. Hopefully, I didn't steal one of your picks, but by picking two. But because I kept bouncing between the two, and I'm just like, man, I don't know. I feel like this is a series that needs to come back because we don't have enough entry level. For Dragon Quest, that seems like it's a very serious, it's not serious, but turn based. And then they made Dragon Quest Builders to try and get younger kids interested in that world, to kind of hey, you get in here and do some Minecraft stuff, and then maybe you'll be interested enough to fire up a real Dragon Quest.
Even the same with the Pokemon, with the Dragon Quest Joker, right? That was basically a monster Pokemon style game too. So yeah,
absolutely.
No, Brendan, that's an excellent pick, because Intelligent System, what they do a good job is, you might not be a Fire Emblem fan, but their character designs are irresistible. Yeah. And that's what you can get out of Intelligent. Now, I haven't really seen them do, other than Paper Mario, I haven't really seen them do a traditional style of Mystic Quest. I don't know how that battle system, I think it wouldn't be traditional. I think it has to be something really unique for Mystic Quest only, right? Because I think that's the way they have to do it. And one of the things too, it might be best of both worlds, like Paper Mario, where it's turn-based, but it's all active at the same time. And what that means for listeners is you still pick who you want to attack, but you still have to do the action of the attack comes in. For instance, when Mario has to attack somebody, and this goes all the way back to Super Paper Mario, where you're doing the action, but they're telling you press A at the right time, or press A as fast as you can at this moment. These action moments while you're still choosing. So it's more like, I'm still doing the work, but I still got to choose. so that can work for Mystic Quest, because I'm going to be honest with you. Mystic Quest, besides the music, which I didn't get a chance to listen to music too much, which I heard the music is great, apparently, is the game itself is not very appetizing. It feels like it's very, compared to the other Final Fantasies, it feels like that they were trying to go too American. So it really feels plain, I guess. They want to make it so simple for us. They're not really going to care about, we're not really going to care about doing the character development. People like Zelda. So even though it's turn-based, we're still going to give you items like Zelda, like bombs and grappling hooks. Yeah. And it's like, where are we going with this? And the fact that, big monsters scare you. So these monsters that should be common little monsters are 10 times bigger than you in the game. There's no save point. And no randoms, which it was cool. I was like, okay, cool. I like that. The fact that they thought about Americans do not like random encounters. And that's still true to this day. And so we like to see the enemy we're attacking and decide how we want to attack him. But when you were talking about the other Final Fantasies, I realized that Final Fantasy spinoffs, I feel like those are the bait to see, do people would like this idea or that idea? I mean, because of that, that's what we got. The Mana series, which it was called Final Fantasy Adventure back in the time, became the Mana series. That also became the Saga series, so your romantic sagas and whatnot. And then you got your Tactics. Then you got your Explorers. Hell, you even got Crystal Chronicles, which is not my favorite series ever. But apparently it went far enough, so it's interesting with this. Mystic Quest could have been this series that could have been the leader of this whole pack of these spin-offs, because they consider Mystic Quest a spin-off even though it's not a spin-off. It's just Final Fantasy on the title for comfort food. The cover is cool, but what the hell is Mystic Quest? But Final Fantasy's well, that's a familiar name, right?
And they did that again too with like you said, the Mana series, like Final Fantasy Adventure. Final Fantasy Legend. Are those directly Final Fantasy games? No, they're kind of spin-off games. And as I said, one of them is directly pretty much the first saga, or the first Mana game.
Yeah.
But they just named it that because it had name recognition, which is funny because they didn't think people over here could handle that hard of a game. Exactly. But they kept labeling it because it sold a lot of copies on the NES. So it's Final Fantasy. So it's this weird dichotomy of, the Americans love Final Fantasy, but we're not going to give them all the Final Fantasy because they can't handle the Final Fantasy. So we're going to give them these other ones.
So the way I went is totally the opposite direction you went.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I don't want it short. Okay. And I don't want it to be simple-minded. What I want is I wanted this to be a collaboration, personal series to Nintendo. So you have your regular Final Fantasy, then you have the Nintendo Final Fantasy. That is a Mystic Quest. And that's the personal. Basically, for instance, this could have been their Bravely Default. This could be their Octopath Traveler. This can be that series where you get your own iconic characters that Nintendo could help design, and make these characters. Nintendo's good at making iconic characters. Regardless of what you say, they're good. Splatoon is one of those things, right? I didn't know Splatoon was going to be that popular. Those characters are iconic. So I would love the collaboration of this together, like the Super Mario RPG, except the Final Fantasy, where they get best of both worlds. You get the new mechanic, battle systems, all this stuff. Let Nintendo do the designs. Let them do this design in a cool way and make that private. So that's more of here's the world's Final Fantasy, but then here's the Nintendo Final Fantasy. And that would be freaking amazing the way they could push that idea to me. Now, for the developers, I picked a person also in-house with Nintendo, and they're known for going bigger on their RPG games, and they used to work with Square Enix, and they spin off to do their own thing based on an iconic word, and because of that word, it carries on to every game they have played except for Bad and Kados, but it is Monolith Soft. And they're people that brought you Xenogear, Xenosaga, Xenoblade Chronicles, all of that, minus Bad and Kados. And they're the ones that should lead this flagship of, here's the new, we collaborate. We know how Square Enix is. We used to be part of that. So we know our stuff. Nintendo I think they bought Monolith because they want a Final Fantasy in-house in their own way. And that is Monolith Soft. They are a Final Fantasy Studios per se.
I feel like that's what they want Xenoblade to be. It's
yes.
big epic RPG series, and that's something that doesn't really get hammered home enough about the sheer diversity of the in-house studios at Nintendo. A lot of people just think of Nintendo as Mario and Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more than that. As you said with Monolith, they have that background in these RPGs, and they've done quite a few of them now with Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
And been right under their umbrella, and they've been really well touted and well liked games among the community.
Yeah, they weirdly enough, a lot of people don't know that they do a lot of work behind the scenes, excluded from their series. Right? Do you think Breath of the Wild was all in-house? No, Monolith had to come because Monolith is known to make big expanded worlds. They might not focus on the gameplay, but if you want the big expanded worlds, they are big for that. Look at Xenoblade Chronicles 2. You don't have to like the game, but the fact that man, it's crazy how much they can take advantage of the amount of memory they got. Like, here's all you got. What can you do that? Oh, watch us. Look at the original one on the Wii. Yeah, it's not really pretty looking, but man, that game is massive for what they were trying to do for that. So they are capable of using that amount of power they were given to them to the max and make it run smoothly without any hiccups. Yeah. So them doing a collaboration with Square Enix together as the middleman, the one that connected all together, and make this a Final Fantasy private house as their Bravely Default, as their Octopath Traveler, or whatever, and make that like, yeah, you guys got the main entries, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, but then you got the Mystic Quest with us. And this is our Final Fantasy house. Here's all our iconic characters. Because I don't know why. I would love to see what they would do with their own version of Final Fantasy. Now, I'm not saying picture iconic characters now to that, but I'm just saying, like, imagine if Nintendo made Cloud Strife from 7. How the hell would that look? What would that look like to people? Like, that's the iconic thing I want to see from them, to see what they can really do. So, yeah, I want the full 40 hours gameplay, all stuff. I want a new, interesting battle system like Final Fantasy, like a unique one in each entry, trying something new with a little touch of Nintendo in there too. Because Nintendo does have some good ideas with some of their battle systems. Their battle systems are a little bit more fun, as Final Fantasy is a little bit more hardcore-ish. So, and having both best of the world will be the best place for Nintendo and Sony and Square Enix to kind of get back together during the Super Nintendo time,
Well, exactly, and maybe what you could also do is that you could have them lead up, because there's a lot of people who want a remake to the original Mario RPG. As we said, that game spawned off Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi series, but that original game, it has to be Square and Nintendo together because they have shared ownership. And this could doing something like this where they have this thing. It'd be neat to get a complete reimagining or a remake of that series or that game based off of a new relationship forged by this. And bringing back just the name of Mystic Quest would for like a lot of new gamers, it wouldn't mean anything, but for a lot of old gamers, like, Mystic Quest, they're doing a new Mystic Quest, what?
Is there chance for a reboot? This is the game that could be a reboot where the old one doesn't even matter anymore, just like Spec Ops, right?
Well, and and also you mentioned Crystal Chronicles earlier. Like, that was like an attempt at that way back on the GameCube. Have a Final Fantasy thing here that's got that weird Final Fantasy aesthetic, and it didn't really take off. But then, of course, now in the Switch era, or the as a 3DS and then now Switch with the Bravely Defaults and Octopaths, you have those, and those are a little bit more Bravely Default's a hardcore turn-based old school RPG. Like, that is Final Fantasies you can get without it putting a name on it that says Final Fantasy. That's like old school. Bravely Default was something completely different that has aesthetics of that. But to have them in charge of something that's really big and massive is something like they've been doing with Xenoblade, but make it with that Final Fantasy flavor.
Yes.
Make it, I think that would be really cool as well. Yeah, absolutely. I'm on board.
If there's a couple things I would change for the gameplay, a lot of RPGs don't do this. I think it's the reason why Chrono Trigger to this day is still iconic for its battle system and whatnot. But there's not a lot of teamwork attacks. I miss a lot. I miss that. I think the teamwork attack really bonds the characters a little bit more in my mindset, and I would love for that to come back. Maybe make this one of the prime things for this game. I would love that, and also on top of that, make it so memorable. I guess. And I know it's hard to say that. It's hard to, because everybody makes a game wants to try to make their game memorable. I mean, that's what everybody wants to do, right? But I guess, like, other than Final Fantasy, I want to be wowed with something that just so bizarre wow, I guess. It's so confusing to say, I know. Like, what does bizarre wow mean? I guess I want something where I didn't see it coming and I like it. So
I get you. I mean, the thing is that, see, Final Fantasy has a certain flavor and a flavor about it that is just familiar, I guess. And I guess if you're a longtime fan of that has changed over the years. Mm-hmm. Because the newer version of what they consider to be Final Fantasy is different than what it was back in the late 90s. But then look at what they're doing with the new one, with 16, where it's like, You can see a little bit of 15 in there, but they went back to that old school design with that more of a medieval style, and that's what's got me interested in that, because it's like, you know, it's cool with the whole modern version and tech, and you know, it's weird, it's how it's modern but old. I like that old school feel with Final Fantasy because I feel like at home with it, mm-hmm. And you know, every single entry is a bit different. Some of it hits hard. Some of it nails the character design. Sometimes it's like I look at it, I'm like, that looks very basic, mm-hmm. You know. And so, and, you know, and that's something that, to get that balance between what Square can do in their design and what Nintendo can do with their design, mm-hmm. would be really cool. So
yeah. So woo. All right. This was a jam-packed episode for 2 games and whatnot, but for the listeners, we love to hear all your thoughts and whatnot. So, but with that, I want to thank everybody for once again joining us on this showcase as we present 2 games to you, and still a lot more on the way. It's still the beginning of the year, you know. It's only February, so you know, we got a lot more picks, a lot more randoms to throw out there. I'm excited for what the next pick is. I hope you guys are excited for the next pick. But remember, we are part of the In-Game Boss program, a network of gaming and other variety shows. So definitely check out all our shows on our listening spots and whatnot, including YouTube. And to find us, remember, we're on Facebook and Twitter. You can always find us at Program In, capital P, capital E. And, you know, like I said, reach out, have fun, talk to me. I'm cool. Let's do this. And for Mr. Brendan,
you can check out the Game Addicts podcast over at GameAddictsPodcast.com. We're on podcast services all around the globe. We're also on YouTube to have the video component with some gameplay stuff interspersed. You know, when I can. I haven't been able to do any lately because dad life, but it is what it is. But you can also reach out on social media at Game Addicts Play across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm there. And yeah, you know, looking forward to the new year. Looking forward to some new games. Looking forward to trying to play some games that are in my back catalog, because I still don't have one of those magical brand new shiny consoles. So I'm going to try and take advantage of that while I don't have that, mm-hmm. and play some things that have been in my back catalog.
No, me too. If I don't do it now, I'll never get to it, right?
Yep, exactly.
Right. Thank y'all so much, and we will catch you on the next showcase.